I notice a lot when I listen to or watch different reviews or read reviews. Most of them usually entail the reviewer kind of describing the music as it is. They can be very creative sometimes. They can be very articulate in the way in which they're able to break down the music or song structure and album structure, the lyrical content, and all of that stuff. And I find those things very interesting. And for me personally, I do enjoy hearing those kinds of things as well, or reading about those things, because it does gives me a better perspective of just having a higher level of granularity in my experience of the music. But for me personally, I feel like what is most interesting is the subjective experience of the music, or what it makes you feel, or my personal and internal experience as well listening to it. In terms just for general knowledge, I'm not someone who is a. I don't listen to. I've never really been into black metal or heavy metal or black gaze. A couple of years ago I tried listening to Deafheaven Sunbather because of all the wide critical acclaim it was getting, and I don't think I actually made it through the album. I At the time I was much younger and I didn't really know how to approach the genre. I felt like at the time I was not maybe knowledgeable enough, or I didn't have enough context to really appreciate the music. So I didn't really touch the whole genre, and generally it's not because of any particular prejudice against it, but I just felt like I needed some kind of introduction to it, and I needed to have more background knowledge about it, and I haven't really been able to do that. And I've listened to some heavy metal from the 70s and 80s, but not really a full in-depth dive into it. Listening to this Deafheaven album, Ordinary Corrupt Human Love, for me personally, it just blew my expectations out of the water. I was listening to the album and my goosebumps immediately from the first song, from the first few notes. It's so. It sounds stereotypical to say, but it sounded very ethereal and just beautifully musical in a way that most music doesn't seem to be. I know that sounds kind of like a weird thing to say, but a lot of music these days, especially some of the things even I review on this channel or talk about, especially the rap music, not a lot of it is very musical in the sense that these songs were so engaging and there's so much heart and emotion in them. I think maybe it's because they don't necessarily adhere to the pop structure that you usually hear with most music or most pop songs, the verse chorus verse thing, and for them, and for I guess maybe it's for this genre of music perhaps maybe this is why they're getting comparisons to classical music very often, but it seems like the songs are more in parts as opposed to cyclical in structure. It's in waves and in phases that allow you to have this kind of singular experience. And when I listened to the album, I wasn't really looking at the names of the songs. I was listening to it as one complete hour-long experience. And again, immediately I had goosebumps all over. I had all these preconceptions about the screaming voice, for example, in heavy metal, that I thought I would never really understand how to get into it. And when I did, when the vocals started to get in the first song, "You Without End," I remember being very confused at first, and my initial instinct was to look up the lyrics. I went to Genius. I was reading the lyrics of the song, and for one, I was hearing the vocals, but I wasn't actually understanding what they were saying. And I was looking at the lyrics, and I remember I was having a hard time actually matching what he was saying with the lyrics. So I was having a hard time looking through the song and wondering which part the lyrics were up to. Then after a while, I realized, this is kind of a mood thing. Perhaps the lyrics is of vital importance, but in my first experience of this album, I really just want to allow the vocals, allow the screaming, allow the cathartic release and all this energy to meld with into the vocal, into the instrumental, and into the beautiful, guitars, electric guitars and pianos and bass and everything. And I guess what I really enjoyed about this album was that I felt like I was immersed in this sonic journey of sorts, and this is not something you usually get in most music, at least especially music today, where we're very single heavy, singles driven. I mean, obviously, that's not to say that music wasn't like this before. It always was, has been with pop music, but that really takes away from the album experience to some degree. And when I listened to this album, it just felt like there was so much thought and care put into every single musical progression, I felt so elated, and again I just felt so much. I was getting euphoria from the music, something I don't usually get, especially when I listen to. I don't know what was I listening to earlier today. I don't know, YBN Namir or something, but I just these musical experiences for me. These are kinds of stuff that I feel like I can't just casually listen to. I can't listen to it normally in the background or something. You need its full attention, and you need to really respect the music and respect the artistry of the musicians. And I am so glad that I was able to really give myself the space and time to appreciate and get into this Deafheaven album. And I really want to look into Sunbather and perhaps other artists from the same or similar genres of heavy metal and black gaze and all of that stuff. But overall, incredible album. It's probably one of my favorite albums of the year. Definitely one of my favorite album experiences. Along with the Death Grips album, which is very interesting because those genres of music are not necessarily something I would normally listen to in my casual day-to-day experiences in my day-to-day life. But when you really give an amount of attention, critical attention, and just allow yourself to get lost within a piece of music, it is so worth it. And if you have 1 hour to spare, I highly recommend checking this out. Even though you may not be totally in love with the vocal delivery, just try to think of it as an instrumental, as an instrument itself, as it has always been to some degree, and just let yourself flow into its sense of complete catharsis and beauty and love and sadness, and just it's a great album, and I highly recommend checking it out.